Hey guys, I'm decided to make a addendum to my review of Dungeoneering 1.5, talking specifically about the resource dungeons. I have checked all the resource dungeons that I can currently get at my level of 68, which I mentioned I actually got 68 by checking the resource dungeons, because you do gain Dungeoneering experience whenever you enter a resource dungeon for the first time. And this time I can actually make a more knowledgeable review of said resource dungeons. And how about I'm going to switch back between my actual playing and the RuneScape knowledge base, where I can talk about each dungeon separately that I've seen. Right now, I'm actually in what I think is the best of all the resource dungeons. Hey, look, I got a strange rock. The reason why I think this resource dungeon is the best of the resource dungeons, it only requires 15 Dungeoneering to enter, but it has a bunch of different rocks you can mine, including mithril, silver, and coal. As you can see, I'm mining coal right now. And actually, I'm just going to drop this strange rock, because I really don't want any strange rocks right now. But the main thing that is great about this dungeon with these rocks, I'm going to just show you. It has a bank deposit box. You can deposit your ores or your other rocks right away, and basically it's even better than I think it's probably better than. Oh man, I am really having hiccups. I think it's better than granite. I think it's better than coal trucks. I think it's probably one of the best ways to train mining and still make some money off of it, because of course coal actually sells for a moderate amount of cash. So that's definitely my favorite of all the resource dungeons. Let's go starting from the lowest level. Edgeville Dungeon. You have the contents of these different types of herb spawns that I talked about, and a whole freaking lot of Chaos Druids. Now, that is definitely great if you want to have, if you want to collect herbs, although I believe it is in a more inconvenient place, because I'll tell you right, I'll say it's in the Edgeville Dungeon. I'm not going to give away where they are, even though they're not that hard to find. It's in the Edgeville Dungeon, so it's, again, a kind of an inconvenient place to try to collect herbs and bring them to a bank, unless you have a pack yak or something, of course. But and the Renar spawn is like one in a corner of the dungeon every 2 minutes, and these resource dungeons, as you can see, because there's another player in here, they're not dungeons that are your own single ones, as well. I guess it's kind of to be expected, but so basically you can have other people who are in the dungeon at the same time. I'm just being lucky with all this coal over here. So let's go on to damn it. I think the Edgeville Dungeon is a good one, and yeah, it's a nice dungeon to be at, and it's pretty good, but I still think the Dwarven Mine one's better. This other Edgeville Dungeon one is also, I'm not going to say where it is, but it has a whole lot of hill giants, is accessible to free-to-play, and it also has spawns of limpwort roots. But it's also in an even more inconvenient place to try to use for, say, banking limpwort roots or something, unless you have the patience to keep running back and forth a long way to get them. But I guess it's not too bad for a thing it's free to play, so it's an easy source of limpwort roots, which are good for cash, because since they're, 2k each right now? I don't know. Anyway, Karamja Volcano. Dungeoneering level 25. It says it has implings, but I didn't see a single impling there. I did see a lot of level 2 imps, but I didn't see any actual implings that you could catch with a net or your bare hands. And, well, catching them with your bare... It would have been nice to actually see implings in there, but I guess they're not there or something. And anyway, the dungeon that's there is giant, and it has a ton of lesser demons. If you have a lesser demon slayer task, and the Karamja Volcano lesser demons are, full, then feel free to use the dungeon entrance that's right next to these damn lesser demons, and, find more lesser demons, which is kind of redundant. You'd think that maybe it'd be nice to have a resource dungeon that is not in the place where that resource already is. Anyway, let's move on. Now we have the Demonheim Peninsula. I'm not going to say where it is, and this one's arguably the hardest to find, because the picture Demonheim all looks a lot like that, so it's kind of hard to tell where it is. But it has free-to-play access maple trees and willow trees. I'm not a big person who likes being uber tree choppy, so it doesn't really matter to me. and I don't think that one's good for maple trees for free-to-play. The only problem is there's not much of a reason for free-to-play to chop maples other than woodcutting experience, since maples sell for, what, like 20 gold coins right now? I don't know. Anyway, so that one's a pretty nice one for free-to-players, but it's not really that useful otherwise, because there are so many better places for members. Now, please tell me I don't have fulls in my bank. Yes, I have space for coal. Alright, so we now move on to the Backstorian Waterfall. And where you find fire giants in the Backstorian Waterfall, you can go to a hidden resource dungeon where there's more fire giants. And nothing else. I mean, like I was saying about the Lesser Demons one, I don't really see why you would want to have a dungeon full of fire giants in a place where there's already a ton of fire giants anyway. I mean, sure, people go to fire giants on Slayer tasks, but since a whole lot of better monsters are to kill, fire giants are no longer the monster to kill, and therefore people really only go to them for boring Slayer tasks. If you can use Kuradal, it's better... Oh wait, no, Kuradal doesn't have access to fire giants. Whoops, my bad. Anyway, there's already enough fire giants usually in the Waterfall dungeon anyway for a moderate amount of people to be in there. And, well, there's just a bunch of more fire giants, and it would have been nice to have something else other than fire giants in there, because, I mean, it isn't really that useful since there are already a lot of them around. Okay, the Mining Guild. The Mining Guild has a dungeon that has more rocks, except these are higher level ones, such as Mithril, Adamantite, and Runite. There are 3 Runite rocks in this dungeon, but there is not a bank deposit box, although usually in the time that you'd have to wait for Runite rocks to spawn, you'd have time to go back and forth to the bank at least 6 times. And like I said though, since you've got since these dungeons are not instanced for each separate person, those 3 rune rocks are going to be in high competition anyway on every world. But it's still nice to have 3 rune rocks in a completely safe place. So now I'll move on even further to the one that's in Taverley Dungeon. First one, that requires 55 dungeoneering, has, well, it's in probably the most inconvenient spot ever, because the Hellhounds in Taverley Dungeon are a pain in the ass to get to. And the dungeon just, well, has more Hellhounds. There's enough Hellhounds in the Taverley Dungeon usually anyway, that you don't have to worry about, like, well, running out of people to be there, running out of Hellhounds for people to kill. So, I don't really see the point of having more Hellhounds in an already annoyingly inconvenient spot. And, well, yeah, it's not good. I don't think that one's a very good dungeon at all, because I also just don't like killing Hellhounds. And the Hellhounds are in Kuradal's dungeon, so you could go, if you had the Slayer for it, you could go into Kuradal's dungeon, get a Ferocious Ring, and kill them even faster. Anyway, we will now move on to the Taverley Dungeon one with blue dragon scales and blue dragons. There are a ton of blue dragons. A ton. There are, like, at least 10 different blue dragons in that dungeon. And it's in if you have 70 agility, it could be slightly more useful for trying to kill blue dragons for a Slayer task than in Kuradal's dungeon. But, and at least, well, if you're using, say, the Love Story chipped teletablets to get to Taverley's house portal. But it's not a whole... I mean, the blue dragon scales are nice, and it's good to collect them. You'd have to run through a whole bunch of blue dragons to get to them. But, I mean, if you have... I think that dungeon is only really good if you have the amount of agility needed, which is 70, to get to that dungeon without having to run through the entire Taverley dungeon in the first place, or else it's a real pain in the ass. I know I keep repeating myself. But, anyway, so I'd say... Although I still think because of how many blue dragons are there, it's really nice if you have a blue dragon Slayer task. Anyway, let's move on. This is the last one that I can access, Varrock Sewers. Now, this one, if you can head to Edgeville, whether by dying after doing Nomad's Requiem, or by using a teleport in some way or something, then you can go straight through the Edgeville dungeon and use the pipe to get to the Varrock Sewers, and then run down and get to that dungeon entrance. And the main draw of this area is that there are 6 magic trees right next to each other. 6. I think that's more than any other concentration of magic trees in the entire game. So, even though it's a little bit of a pain to get to, that one is definitely great for getting woodcutting experience, and the moss giants aren't really any use for killing in there, because there's already moss giants in the Varrock Sewers, and there's also spawns of Limport roots, but of course, in comparison to 6 magic trees, that doesn't really matter. Now, I haven't seen these ones myself, but a Chaos Tunnel's one that looks like they're in the spots where the black demons are. You can then go to a dungeon that has more black demons. Once again, the whole redundancy problem. I guess there's probably a good reason for having that there, but I don't like it. And I'm running out of time, so the Alkareed Scorpion Mine has mining rocks, gem rocks, and impling spawn points. Hopefully these implings are actual implings and not level 2 imps. I don't know. It sounds nice, though, and you get a ridiculous amount of dungeoneering experience for it. And so, yeah, gem rocks are nice, even though you could probably do better by using the Chronometry Gloves 3. Brimhaven Dungeon, a hammer and anvil with iron dragons and steel dragons. Basically, you can finally actually hammer the bars that you get from killing iron dragons and steel dragons, and get smithing experience at the same time that you get Slayer experience, or that you kill that you just try to go for dragon legs. And finally, the all revered frost dragons in the Asgardian Ice Dungeon, dungeoneering level 85 to get to 15,000 dungeoneering experience, and you can kill frost dragons for bones that cost like 20k. I have no idea how many are in there, but I think if it's anything like the blue dragon one, it's awesome. So I'd still give this maybe now to a 9 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10 after being informed, if only because of redundancy errors and, well, having some dungeons that don't seem to be very useful. Anyway, I'm out of time, so I'll see you guys in my next video.